Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by RegulatorWatch.com. One of the largest producers of combustible tobacco products in the world is British American Tobacco, BAT. And while the company currently derives 80% of its revenue from traditional tobacco sales, it aims to reduce this figure to 50% by 2035 by promoting alternative products such as vapes, nicotine pouches, and heated tobacco. The company is going all in on its smokeless transformation, and this month BAT introduced Omni, an evidence-based platform designed to support tobacco harm reduction efforts. RegWatch caught up with a senior representative from BAT while we were in Warsaw, Poland, for the Global Forum on Nicotine, and here is a part of that conversation. So you are the group head of life sciences at BAT. What does that mean?
Well, that means that my team is responsible for a lot of the science that happens at BAT. So that's our chemistry, our preclinical sciences, our clinical sciences, and our behavioral and consumer behavior sciences.
Now, why is science important to a tobacco company?
Well, it's so important because with tobacco harm reduction being such an important public health initiative, we want to make sure we have all the science needed to demonstrate the reduced risk potential of products that are important for tobacco harm reduction. So all the science around our smokeless, non-combustible products that are ideally less risky products for smokers to switch to if they want to continue to use tobacco or nicotine-containing products.
Elaine, often we hear that science is not trusted when it comes from a tobacco company. Mm-hmm. Do regulators trust the science from tobacco companies?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to do very rigorous, high quality science that meets the standards that are available out there, and to publish all of our science in peer-reviewed journals, make sure that it's got visibility, it's got, and it has eyes on it from people other than us who can give us feedback on how to make our science better, frankly. So I think that's really step one in making sure that our science, that regulators would even consider our science to be important. I know, for example, in the US, FDA obviously is very, wants a lot of science in order to be able to give marketing authorizations to new products. And so for that market in particular, we have to do a lot of science, and they do. We were the first company to receive marketing granted orders for e-cigarettes. And that was the result of a big, high-quality science package.
Well, tell me about that product and that process.
The product was called Vuse Solo. It's called Vuse Solo. It's still in the market today. But the process was really creating a science package that took a number of years to complete. And a big submission. Submissions are, several 100,000 pages of information and data. So it was a long process, and not many products in the U.S. have attained that status of having a marketing authorization through the pMTA pathway, and there are a lot of products that are waiting to be reviewed in that pathway as well. So,
has that pathway demonstrated itself to be unbiased and fair?
I think ideally it is set out that way. I think that there are a lot of questions around kind of the goalposts changing as time has gone on, in terms of there was initially a draft guidance on the science that was recommended by FDA, then that became final guidance, which was very helpful, but still doesn't contain there was a final rule, not final guidance. Well, there was final guidance and then there was a final rule. So it describes all of that, but I also would say that the goalposts had continued to move. And so questions around comparing tobacco flavors to other flavors, like menthol and other flavors, and having to demonstrate greater switching rates in adult smokers relative to tobacco flavors, that was very new, and I think a lot of people have called that into question. And is that truly what the Tobacco Control Act was looking to regulate?
The moving goalposts of the pMTA process frustrates many people. What do you think about the appropriate for the protection of public health in terms of, have they been clear about what that standard really is?
I think there could be additional clarity on what appropriate for the protection of public health is. Absolutely. I think there's two big pieces of that. The new standard that they put in around, as I just mentioned, comparing tobacco flavors to non-tobacco flavors, essentially, and having to demonstrate adult switching. So there's happens at greater rates with non-tobacco flavors compared to tobacco flavors. That balanced with basically use by the people who are not intended to use the product. So that would be non-users, former users, and underage users. So, but what that balance really is really unclear. Nobody has a clear definition and kind of a clear metric on what that difference needs to be.
Which is challenging.
Yeah, it is challenging for sure.
So there's a lot of misperceptions around nicotine vaping products and safer nicotine products. Tell us about that in terms of, does nicotine cause disease?
Nicotine there's a lot of misperception around whether nicotine causes cancer, whether it causes cardiovascular disease. And what we know is that it's actually the combustion from smoking cigarettes that causes those diseases, not the nicotine itself. I think that as far as the misperceptions are concerned, it seems like there's a lot of, and I'll use the word ignorance, I mean, out of no disrespect, but even among healthcare practitioners, in several countries where healthcare practitioners have been surveyed, upwards of 80% of healthcare practitioners think that nicotine causes cancer or causes heart disease, and so there's obviously a lot we can do there to help with that correcting of those misbeliefs.
Right, and there's a bunch of common misbeliefs, and I know that you've spoken about this in the past. You mentioned in a video there is no stakeholder recognition for THR. What does that mean? Well,
the misbelief does being that it's a grand statement, of course, but that regulators overall don't necessarily recognize it. The misbelief is that regulators don't recognize THR, and that stakeholders, public health stakeholders, don't recognize THR. But I think in reality, obviously, we have forums like GFN. There's a huge public health support, but I think there's also a huge there's huge opposition as well. And the opposition comes, I think, from two areas, in my view anyway. There's the ignorance of what the products actually, what they do, and how they can help smokers. But also there are people who, even in light and with exposure to the scientific evidence, still firmly believe that they are not part of the true harm reduction solution.
FDA Commissioner Robert Califf at a congressional hearing, the Oversight Committee hearing, I think it was like around first week of May, he was pressed by Congress people many times about THR and FDA's commitment to THR, because of course THR is in the Smoking Act, right, of 2009. He refused to accept THR. He literally, in response to being pressed on it, would say that it's an industry term. And that was his response to it. And at one point he actually said it's part of a vast advertising campaign. So how can on one side we look to FDA to fairly regulate around THR when he's saying that it's an industry plot?
Well, I think that we all have our kind of ingrained opinions, and perhaps I realize that statement came from kind of the head of FDA, but that's one person in the process. That's one person in the organization. so I think that, going back to the Tobacco Control Act, it's written such that, I mean, truly to improve public health means having these products available to smokers. And so while somebody could say that, that's actually not kind of how the Tobacco Control Act is written, and I think intended to be enforced, actually. So I think that personal opinions will happen, but I think at the end of the day, we just have to go back to the Tobacco Control Act and need to make sure that is being followed in terms of how these applications are being looked at.
So can a company like yours develop new vaping technologies and apply for pMTA, or are we stuck with just the older technologies?
Yes and yes. So we can develop new technologies. We can put together pMTAs. We can submit those into FDA. The reality is right now we are still stuck in 2016 because really, for the most part, I mean, with very few exceptions, no new products have been approved is not the right word, authorized in the US. And so the reality is that we're still kind of stuck in that kind of 2016 timeframe when that was the last time you could put products into the market.
So the deeming rule prevents new products from going through the pathway?
No, it just prevents new products being introduced into commerce before they get an authorization. But the reality is, because of the number of applications the FDA received in September of 2020 to keep those products on the market that were in the market as of 2016, that they've completed a number of those. Only 23 products have been granted marketing orders, and they're still to finalize the rest of them. So until that happens, I don't think we're going to see any other products moving through the pMTA review process, and we're still waiting. So right now that's why it feels like we're stuck in 2016.
So the entire U.S. market, which of course is the largest vaping market in the world, it's $12 billion, give or take, annually. The next closest one is the U.K. at $2 billion. So I mean, the U.S. really does drive the business. As a vapor and somebody who covers these issues, we're just wondering, are we going to see a massive clearing of the marketplace at some point? Yeah, FDA just came out saying they're doing an interagency task force for enforcement and so forth. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you have an opinion on that, or?
Well, what I do know is that, I mean, now my role is based in the UK at this point, so I've seen more firsthand what happens in other markets, and the notification process that happens as a result of the Tobacco Products Directive. While there's nothing that's perfect out there at this point, I would say, but being able to notify, make sure you're following product standards, here's what we would like to put in the market, and then being able to put it into the market, it allows for innovation, it allows for new products to be introduced to the adult smokers who are looking for newer, different products. It allows kind of the most recent innovations to be able to come to the marketplace. It seems to work. It's seeming like it's working a lot better than what's happening in the U.S. at this point.
So every product that hasn't received authorization in the United States as of today, unless it's stuck in the pending process, is pretty much illegal.
Yeah. It's true. And technically, and then there's enforcement discretion, a term that's called enforcement discretion on the products that do have the applications in that haven't been authorized, that were in the market before or in 2016, that can still be in the market. I think those are technically considered illegal, but because of enforcement discretion, they're allowed to be in the marketplace.
Elaine, tell us about BAT's, what is it, smokeless transition?
Transformation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's really exciting. I mean, it's an exciting time, I think, at BAT because, so the mission of the company is to create a better tomorrow. And with the vision of doing that through building a smokeless world. And ideally, to build a smokeless world, you got to have products that are going to encourage adult smokers to switch to better, less risky products if they want to continue using tobacco and nicotine products.
How far is BAT down the road?
Well, I mean, what I think is great about BAT is that we recognize that it's not one product that is appropriate for any given person who smokes. And so we have products that are in the vaping category, we have products in the nicotine pouch category, and we have products that are in heated product category. So Vuse, Velo, Glow. And we put a lot of effort into developing all of those products and making sure that we're continuing to improve those products in the marketplace as well.
You've done quite a bit of work around toxicology. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the big important things that we do at BAT is make sure that we have quality products that are going to market, that we do all of the necessary science to ensure that if there is a device involved, that the devices meet electrical safety standards, and that our products have a full toxicological review on them and to ensure that they are appropriate to go to the market.
The WHO just a couple of days ago tweeted that vaping devices kill. Did you see that?
Yep, saw that. Don't agree with it, but I saw it.
What are they thinking?
I don't know. I can't answer. I don't know. But I do know that we've done a lot of science that shows that, the number of toxicants, there are 95 to 99% less toxicants in vapor products and emissions of vapor products, that they have much less biological activity when you put them through in vitro toxicological assays, that biomarkers of exposure are reduced when smokers switch to those products. I mean, there's a lot of good news about the reduced risk potential of vaping products.
Big tobacco is the only sector that's got the real money to fight this stuff. Are you able to do 30-second spots to help, clear the air on vaping and let people know that, that they are safer, they are less harmful? Because nobody else seems to be able to do it.
The tobacco industry, we do the science, we want the science to be out there. There are certain conditions where we can directly talk to consumers, but that's probably not one of them. But I would say that we would definitely need people who have probably kind of a less
self-interest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, we want our products to be out there, and we want smokers to know about our products, and the ambition is to get smokers to switch to products if they don't want to completely quit. And they want to continue using tobacco and nicotine products. So, but I think the credibility of the industry, for better or worse, is not in a place where I think the average consumer is going to necessarily look to the tobacco industry to rectify their misperceptions on the products. I mean, yes, happy to scream it from the mountaintops, actually, but yeah, I think it needs to be kind of a holistic effort.
Is THR of value down the chain? So your stakeholder chain, your shareholders, and so forth. Does it play a role in your ESG rating and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's so important to shareholders. I think, and we have the ambition of having 50% of our revenues from new categories products, or these non-combustible products, by 2035. So yes, absolutely. These are things that we're talking to our shareholders about. We're talking to the public about. So it's not only for shareholders. Well, yes, there's kind of the business aspect of it. So yes, absolutely for shareholders. But changing public health also super important to shareholders in that way.
And I guess that's maybe my last question is, if that's the goal, public health doesn't seem to want to play their part in the role. Validating the THR aspect and supporting it.
Well, I think there are people in public health who support it. There are a lot of people who support it, and those are the voices that I have such great respect for. I think that they're some of the most important folks out there, and I want industry to be able to be part of that, movement as well. I do think that there are so many public health people who do have such drive around tobacco harm reduction. There are so many other areas where harm reduction efforts have worked, and they've done a lot of good for public health. And so those people who've worked on that, there are a number of people at this conference actually who've worked on that and who are turning their attentions to tobacco harm reduction. Those voices are so important in this, and I really want industry to be able to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, well, let me finish by asking you then, why is an event like GFN here important?
Oh, it's so important to bring everybody together. The consumer voice is such an important part of this conference, and the public health voice is such an important part of this conference. The fact that industry is able to be such an important presence in this conference, and for us all to work together. I think that's the only way we're going to achieve this, is if we do all work together.